the reality is it blows up until it's been resolved. But the main person involved here, the person that's made these claims and in a book, is now dead. So it's very unlikely it's going to end up in a court case, and very unlikely, therefore, that the Duke of York will ever be have to go to court and defend his name about it. So although this is a media story, this is a story that's been running and running. It was created actually by the men in grey suits at the palace who didn't see the long-term issues here, because they were quite happy to bash Prince Andrew, but actually all that they've done is made cause a distraction ahead of the King's visit to the Vatican. Not particularly good long-term thinking, I don't think.
Now, the King and Queen are about to undertake a historic state visit to the Holy See today. They're joining Pope Leo to celebrate the 2025 Jubilee year. It's a special time for the Catholic Church. And the King is going to be the first British monarch since the Reformation to pray publicly with the Pope. Buckingham Palace are hoping that their intervention last weekend to remove Prince Andrew's titles and honours will have put enough distance from the scandal that has overshadowed the work of the royal family. Let's find out more. The royal editor of the Evening Standard and author of Catherine, the Prince of Wales, the biography, plus many other books on the royals, Robert Jobson, is here. Robert, good morning.
Morning, Rosie.
So tell us what's on the agenda for this two-day visit.
Well, it's a very short visit. I mean, they're talking about it being a state visit. Of course, it's much shorter than one would have normally expected for this time of year with the King. But essentially what we're going to get is one major moment. The King will pray at a public service with Pope Leo XIV during this visit to the Holy See. So, look, it's an important moment as the King is the supreme governor of the Church of England, and we have a new Pope. Of course, Charles and Camilla did actually see the last Pope in private on their last trip to Italy before he sadly passed away. But the reality is this is quite significant. I think in the 80s when Charles visited was with the Pope and that time, Her Majesty the Queen instructed him not to pray with the Pope in public, or not to pray with the Pope. So things have moved on between the Anglican Church and the Catholic Church quite significantly for this moment to happen.
Yeah, why did the late Queen say that, do you think?
Well, it predates me, even though I've been covering the royals for 35 years. I wasn't around when it actually said it, but I think there was some hoo-ha at the time between the Anglicans not wanting there to be such closeness with the Roman Catholic Church, which, if you give them the relationship over the many centuries between the Roman Catholic Church and the Anglican Church, is not really that much of a surprise.
Yeah, and the King has said he'll be the defender of faith, hasn't he? Which is ever so slightly different to what the late Queen had said previously.
Well, he actually, when he became king, was defender of the faith, so there was no change. And of course, what people don't realise is that, and it surprised me, it was actually the Catholic Church that gave him the title of Defender of the Faith, because it predates the Reformation. It was actually given to him for a book he wrote about a marriage, bizarrely.
I didn't know that. The palace are going to be very, very keen that this visit is sort of front and centre of the public's attention, the press attention, rather than the ongoing scandal surrounding Prince Andrew. That's going to be difficult. You know, front page of the Times today, you've got ministers now saying, look, Prince Andrew's been sponging off the state. He's a disgrace, that he should leave his grace and favour mansion. Politically, at this point, how difficult do you think it's going to be for Prince Andrew to stay at Windsor Lodge?
Look, I think the Labour Party and the government and other ministers are really having a field day. The fact that it's not them that's the focus of attention. It wasn't that long ago, was it, that was all arguments about Angela Rayner and property, etc. So I'm sure they're having a field day. How difficult, if he has a lease for Royal Lodge and he has the money to pay for that lease, then there won't be any difficulty at all, because he'll just continue to pay the lease. They can't really turn him out of that position, because it's legally his home. Look, I think obviously this is a distraction. It's not great for the royal family and the brand of the royal family, but it's something that blows up every now and again because of the situation with the Duke of York, as he technically still is, even though he's not allowed to use the title. The reality is it blows up until it's been resolved. But the main person involved here, the person that's made these claims and in a book, is now dead. So it's very unlikely it's going to end up in a court case, and very unlikely, therefore, that the Duke of York will ever be have to go to court and defend his name about it. So although this is a media story, this is a story that's been running and running. It was created actually by the men in grey suits at the palace who didn't see the long-term issues here, because they were quite happy to bash Prince Andrew. But actually all that they've done is cause a distraction ahead of the King's visit to the Vatican. Not particularly good long-term thinking, I don't think.
Yeah, well, of course, and the release of the book yesterday, which has cast sort of lots more scrutiny on some of the claims that Prince Andrew's made in the past. The King, it appears, is pretty furious.
Well, the King will be fairly sanguine about the whole thing. I think that if he reflects upon it, he should look at the position of his own staff, his own people that have been the people that issued the statements about the fact that Andrew was the whole Andrew situation, that they were taking action against him, and actually reflect upon that, because really, was it necessary? I mean, this is a book that has come out. It's been written. It's been published posthumously from a lady who sadly took her own life, and whose account of what happened, despite now being seen that it's 100% accurate, certain people, such as Alan Dershowitz, questioned and judges in America questioned some of the claims that she was making, and said her evidence was not up to scrutiny. So, look, it's easy sadly, once someone is passed and once they published a book posthumously, to say everything in that book is true. It doesn't necessarily mean it is. That said, I think Andrew's behaved pretty appallingly. I think his judgment is poor, but so is the judgment of the Buckingham Palace courtiers, who thought that they could just slam into him, announce this moment where he's going to lose his titles, which he's not, because there's been no Act of Parliament, and that would make it easier for the King's visit to the Vatican. Well, it hasn't. It's just made it worse.
A bill's going to be proposed today by Rachel Maskell. She's an MP who, probably you know that name, she had the Labour whip suspended in July. They want, and it's a cross-party group of MPs who want to back parliamentary legislation, to remove his title of Prince. I mean, it is possible to do it, but how likely do you think it is?
Zero. I mean, the reality, he was born a prince. He's going to remain a prince. The decision for him not to use the title Duke of York is taken himself in consultation with His Majesty. The likelihood of any of these bills getting through Parliament is pretty zero, I would say.
Yeah, it's 11 MPs who have understood to have agreed to be co-sponsors.
It's a lot of bluff and bluster, but we've seen it all before with with politicians. I mean, the reality here is, a lot, as I say, the Labour government and other members of the government, the generic intervention was quite interesting, but there's been a lot of puff and bluster, but they won't actually do anything.
Remind us what Robert Jenrick did.
Well, he as a senior justice minister and as a senior justice secretary, coming out and slamming Prince Andrew, I think was quite interesting, because that showed for the first time really a very senior and in the long term probably a senior politician actually putting making his position very clear. Most of the time that if you look at what the government ministers have said on the record, it's pretty much nothing. They said, it's really a matter for the royal family. Well, actually, it's not. It's a matter for them. So really, it's a matter for Parliament. If they want to bring in this bill, they're going to have to get government support, and I don't think there's anywhere near the support to do that. So.
Yeah. Robert, thank you. Robert Jobson, the royal editor of the Evening Standard and also author of Catherine, the Prince of Wales, the biography plus other titles.